This channel recently surpassed 2.5 million views and 15,000 subscribers, so this week's video is dedicated to my viewers and responding to their questions. The first question is, if I could only drink wines from one region for the rest of my life, which region would that be and why? This is a fantastic question, but I think the answer has got to be Bordeaux. Of course, the red wines from Bordeaux on both the right bank and the left bank are some of my favorites, and there's a wide variety of high-quality options at all price points. But Bordeaux actually has an impressive 60 different appellations, and they're making extremely high-quality wine in a variety of styles. Some of the fastest growing categories in Bordeaux actually include white wine, sparkling wine, and rosé. So it's a lot more than just red wine. And of course, they have some world-class sweet wine as well. So I think I definitely have plenty of variety to choose from, even if I was limited to just Bordeaux. The next question is, what is the most surprising wine that you've ever opened? One that exceeded all your expectations? This is another great question. About 10 years ago, I was at the wine club, and the owner acquired a large cellar of old school Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon from the 90s. In addition to picking out some of my favorites, I took a few flyers on some wines that were selling for around $50 or so, and were from strong vintages like 1994, 95, and 96. One of those wines was the 1995 Etude Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. I ended up buying about 4 of these bottles, and the first time we opened one of them, we were absolutely blown away. The owner of the wine club was shocked at what a high-quality wine this was, and the next time he got some in, he jacked up the price. It turns out the reason it was such a good wine is twofold. First, Tony Soder was the winemaker for Etude at the time. He's of course gone on to do great things in Willamette Valley. In addition, a lot of the fruit for this wine came from 2 extremely famous and prestigious vineyards in Napa Valley. The first of which was the J.J. Cohn Estate, which now provides the fruit for the Scarecrow wines. The nearby Morasoli vineyard also contributed a substantial amount of the fruit for this wine, and the Morasoli vineyard now serves as the source for a number of high-quality single vineyard bottlings in Napa Valley. The next question is, what underrated wine region do you think deserves more attention? There's a lot of possible answers to this question, but I would have to say that Alsace, France is certainly way up there. There's a number of extremely high-quality producers in this region, and they make some of the most epic white wines in the world. In addition, the red wines are becoming progressively better as well. I recently learned that Pinot Noir is the fastest growing category in Alsace, and they're even planting some Syrah as well. Of course, Alsace is also an excellent choice for high-quality sparkling wine, namely Cremant d'Alsace, which is sparkling wine that's made in the traditional method like champagne, but which comes from fruit that's grown in Alsace. The next question relates to wine auctions. A viewer asked for my thoughts on wine auctions and advised that he has only a 50% hit rate on wines that come from auctions. Wine auctions can be a terrific way to source some back vintages of some highly collectible wines that it can be difficult to locate otherwise. But you do need to be extremely careful. Some auction houses do a much better job than others at making sure that the wines that are going into their auctions have been stored properly. The same is true for retailers that purchase collections and then resell them. It's extremely important that you trust the auction house or the retailer. There's one famous auction house that many people buy wine from that I've never once bought a bottle of wine from. The reason? A number of years ago, there was a week when several of my friends on different evenings opened up a bottle that they purchased from this online auction house. All of those bottles turned out to be flawed. They weren't corked bottles. Cork taint can happen to a small percentage of wines regardless of the source. Rather, these were wines that obviously suffered from heat damage. They were completely stewed and madderized, and they were absolutely disgusting. Worse yet, at least 1 or 2 of the bottles looked like they had been through a war and were obviously not well taken care of. So regardless of whether you're purchasing from an auction house or a retailer, definitely try to find out as much as you can about the history of the bottles that you're buying before you pull the trigger. The gold standard is ex-chateau bottlings. These are wines that come directly from the producer itself and had been stored in their library for many years. Failing that, the next best source would be a well-known collection that's been stored properly for many years and which comes from a reputable auction house that does a good job with vetting those bottles before they include them in their auction. In terms of places from which I've personally had good results, certainly Benchmark from California is a retailer that I've had some good luck with, and in terms of auction houses, I really enjoy HDH or Hart Davis Hart from Chicago. Absolutely, one of the most frequently asked questions that I get is whether I still practice law. The answer is yes, absolutely. I'm a partner in a large Texas-based law firm, and I handle data privacy matters as well as intellectual property litigation. Many people also ask how I first got into wine. Well, the answer is around 2007 or so, I was working as a young associate, and I had a business dinner with one of my colleagues who's perhaps best known for representing clients like Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil, and many more. So certainly his expense account is much larger than mine. We went to a business dinner and he ordered the wine. He had just come back from Napa Valley, and so he was impressed with Opus One and ordered a bottle of 2005 Opus One for us to enjoy during the meal with a client. Before this, I'd had only $10 to $15 bottles of wine and really wasn't that impressed. In fact, I would usually drink either beer or a cocktail of some sort rather than choosing wine. But this wine was like nothing else I'd ever experienced before. It was hard to even believe it was wine. It was so much better than everything else I had ever tried. It was an absolute revelation, and it also paired extremely well with the food. This experience made such an impression on me that within 6 months, I made my own trip to Napa Valley, and everything progressed from there. If there's a particular wine or wine experience that triggered your interest in wine, please let me know in the comments below. The next question is, what wine regions are you visiting this year? Well, I've already visited Bordeaux, Napa Valley, and 3 regions in Greece, specifically Naousa, Crete, and Santorini. In the near future, I'll also be visiting Spain, where I'll go to Castilla y León for the first time, and also back to Rioja. Then later in December, it's back to Bordeaux. There may be another wine region or 2 during my trip to France, and hopefully there'll be a spontaneous trip before the end of the year. But currently, that's all that I have planned. The next question is, how many bottles do you have in your wine collection? My best guess is right around 2,000 or so. While I do use Cellar Tracker, I'm hopelessly behind entering wines in Cellar Tracker, and there's a number of wines that I receive for evaluation purposes that I never add to my Cellar Tracker. For that reason, it's hard to answer with any precision, but if I had to give a swag, it would be around 2,000 bottles. Another frequently asked question is why I don't do a wine cellar tour video for my own collection. Well, the answer is, unfortunately now I don't have a single storage solution that looks presentable. I have a number of solutions that are scattered all over, not just my house, but the city of Dallas. I have some off-site wine storage, as well as 5 to 6 wine refrigerators around the house. I do have a built-in wine cellar at the house that was designed to hold around 750 bottles, but I currently have more than 1,000 bottles in there, including wine that's stacked up on the floor up to my eyeballs, and so it's extremely difficult for me to even get in. But certainly if I ever get my inventory under control, or if I have another storage solution in the future that allows me to present the collection in a more photogenic and presentable way, I will definitely do a video about my own collection. Another viewer writes me as follows: how much wine is too much in terms of number of bottles? I already have far more wine than I can drink, but I continue to buy bottles and add to my collection. Do you buy more wine regardless of the amount that you already have? Well, for me personally, the short answer is yes, but the type of wine that I buy has changed quite a bit over the years. For the most part, now I'm looking for special wine or collectible wine that I'll enjoy with my wine tasting group either now or at some point in the future. Since I already have a large number of wines that are ready to enjoy, I no longer have a specific need for wine cellar defenders, much less daily drinkers. One exception to that is champagne. Since I do go through quite a bit of champagne, I definitely buy non-vintage champagne on a regular basis, pretty much every year. While this answer reflects my personal experience, I think that this is a very personal question and one that each wine collector has to decide for themselves. Factors to take into account when you're making this decision include your time horizon, how many bottles that you consume on a regular basis, and whether you have children who enjoy wine as well. Another viewer asked me to reveal an unpopular wine opinion that I have. This one is a bit of a challenge for me since I typically try not to be too negative, and wine already has a lot of negative headwinds and challenges that it's trying to overcome. But I can say that probably the most unpopular opinion that I have is that I would pretty much always rather enjoy a high-quality white wine, sparkling wine, or red wine than a still rosé. I do enjoy some rosé champagne, and there are one or two producers of high-quality rosé that I enjoy, such as Lopez Heredia, but for the most part, I really do not drink still rosé. So for those of you who've requested videos on rosé, that's the reason why I haven't done one yet. A number of people ask why I have so much University of Illinois gear, despite the fact that I live in Dallas, which is in the heart of SEC country. Well, the answer is I grew up in Michigan, so I've always been a Big Ten guy, and I went to law school at the University of Illinois. Also, today is game day, so ILL. Every time I do a wine video that features top second wines, invariably I'll get a couple comments from people asking why in the heck they would buy a producer's second wine when they can get the top wine from some other producer for the same or even a lower price point. This is another great question. The main thing to keep in mind when you're talking about second wines is that these wines are made in a style that's ready to be enjoyed earlier. Many of my viewers are frequently asking me for recommendations of wines that they can just open in the near term and don't have to put away for a long time before they open them. Second wines are great for that situation. Second wines are often made with fruit from younger vines that's less structured and a little bit more expressive when it's young. In addition, there's typically a higher percentage of Merlot included in second wines, particularly on Bordeaux's left bank, and they use less new oak for the maturation process. For these reasons, most second wines are ready to enjoy very early on. In contrast, top wines, even very high-quality top wines from places like Saint Estèphe, have lots of structure and could require 8 to 10 years or more before they reach their peak. A number of viewers are also interested to know how many days a week I drink wine. As with most questions, the answer is it depends. During time periods when I'm at home, oftentimes I'll enjoy wine between 2 and 4 days per week, depending on what's going on that week. Oftentimes, one of those sessions will be a more intensive session at the wine club, and the others will just be having some wine at home. Of course, when I'm traveling, particularly in Europe and or wine country, it's not uncommon for me to have some wine every single day. But then typically when I get home from a trip, I'll oftentimes go a few days or even a week or more without having any wine at all, just because it doesn't sound good after I've been immersed in wine so deeply for a longer period of time. Other viewers are interested to know how I can possibly taste 100 wines per day, such as when I'm at the James Suckling Great Wines of the World event, or even 1,000 wines in a week, such as during my week in Napa Valley. The answer is that most people in the wine trade definitely taste and spit, so I'm certainly not swallowing all that wine. Of course, there's always exceptions. For example, when I'm visiting top producers in Bordeaux, I will oftentimes swallow at least the top wine in the interest of research so I can better evaluate the complexity and length of the finish. Some viewers are also interested to know some of my favorite food and wine pairings. It's hard to give an exhaustive list, but some that come immediately to mind include burgers with Syrah, pizza and wine, not really any particular type of wine. I enjoy a wide variety of wine with pizza. Other favorites include barbecue and red Zinfandel, sushi and Blanc de Blanc champagne, Chardonnay with lobster dishes, and also high-acid white wines with fried dishes such as fried calamari, fried zucchini blossoms, and more. And when I'm in Tuscany, I absolutely have to have Sangiovese and pasta with the wild boar sauce, or cingale, at least 1 or 2 times when I'm there. Some people also want to know if I always enjoy wine with a meal. The answer may be somewhat surprising for some of you, but it is definitely no. In fact, when I'm enjoying high-end wine, I don't like to be bothered with food, as I like to focus on just the wine itself and seeing how it evolves over the course of the evening. Typically, when I do a food pairing at home, it's to elevate a lesser wine. For example, it's not uncommon for me to receive Oaky California Chardonnay as a holiday gift from vendors such as court reporters. Typically, that's not a style of wine that I would enjoy on its own. However, when I'm making lobster at home, particularly lobster that has some butter sauce, I have found that these Oaky Chardonnays can be an absolutely magical match, and that the whole is definitely greater than the sum of the parts. Some viewers are also interested to know how and when I got involved with social media. Surprisingly, I was actually extremely late to the game. In fact, I was that guy who didn't even have a Facebook account. In fact, for many years, the only social media that I had was LinkedIn. This changed in late 2018 when I finally signed up for Instagram. At that time, I was doing a lot of traveling for work, and oftentimes I would need to eat meals by myself. To keep things interesting, I would oftentimes eat meals at a nice restaurant in places like New York or San Francisco while I was there for patent litigation cases. Either during or after those meals, I started posting some of the experiences that I had in terms of wine and food, and then also posting about some of the wines that I would enjoy at the wine club with our wine tasting group. To my surprise, my Instagram page really resonated with a lot of people, and within about a year, I had 10,000 followers. Then, during the pandemic, a number of producers reached out to me to do virtual tastings and winemaker interviews online. Those winemaker interviews and tastings typically took place on Instagram Live, but I found out that I could repost them on YouTube. And so my podcast channel currently consists of a large number of those winemaker tastings and interviews that I did when I was first starting out. Many people also ask me if I have any wine pet peeves. The answer is yes: generalization and closed-minded, simplistic thinking. For example, I frequently see video titles or opinions from people in which they're making sweeping generalizations about a particular wine region being either good or bad, overpriced or underpriced, or something similar. The problem with these generalizations is that they're never accurate. There's always exceptions. There are amazing soulful wines and uninspiring mediocre wines being made in every single wine region throughout the world and from every different grape variety, as well as blends. In addition, you can find things like overpriced wines in Chile and underpriced wines in Napa Valley. The bottom line is it's always better to be selective, and that's what this channel is all about. The next question is, if I have $50 to spend on a bottle of wine, what's the best way to maximize value? The answer is, definitely check out this video that's linked above, in which I reveal a number of my favorite wines that are selling for around $50 per bottle.